Hello and welcome back to the Reptile Goths YouTube channel. As always, I am your host, Morgan. Today we're going to be talking about a research article I recently read for one of my classes and wrote a paper on. And this research article is about tortoises and the unfortunate fate they tend to meet on railroad tracks. Now, the paper we're looking at today was published in 2018, and the researchers working on this project were looking at a solution to habitat fragmentation as a result of railways cutting through specific habitats. Now, habitat fragmentation is something that happens when, for one reason or another, a chunk of habitat is broken up. So into fragments, if you will. And this case in particular was because of the railroad tracks. Now, something that happens with railroad tracks, with tortoises in particular, is that they can sort of get stuck in between the tracks if they do manage to get over, and unfortunately, they do not survive this a large portion of the time. This study specifically took place in Florida at the John F. Kennedy Space Center, where there is a large stretch of abandoned railway that cuts through a coastal habitat. And these researchers were looking at gopher tortoises. So to start their whole study, the first thing that they were looking at was, are the tracks actually preventing the tortoise movement? And to do this, they started tracking a handful of tortoises that already lived near those tracks. And based on already known data of how far the specific species will travel in general with no barriers, they made a computer model for each individual tortoise that assumed no barriers. And then over the course of a year, they went out, recorded the electronic measurements, and then compared them to those computer models. And what they effectively concluded was that yes, the tracks were restricting the movement of the tortoises in the area. And so because the tracks were in fact restricting the tortoises' movements, this basically did mean that yes, there was a fragmentation of the habitat happening because of these railroad tracks. And so they were able to move on to the next phase of their study, which had to do with, if the tortoise does get in between the tracks, how likely is it for them to be able to get out? So to do this, they set up two plots, one that was within the tracks and one that was just a flat rectangle completely equal to the other track. However, the barrier to escape was very minimum, basically just enough for the researchers to be able to clearly see this area that made up the control arena there. And what they did was they captured a bunch of tortoises, some that lived near the tracks, some that lived far away, let them hang out overnight, and then each one got a turn in these arenas for an hour. And they measured how long the tortoises spent doing different behaviors, with one of the most important numbers, how long it took them to escape. And for all of the ones in the control group, they escaped fairly quickly, whereas none of them in the experimental group that was in the tracks were able to escape that barrier. They were able to stand on their hind legs and attempt to pull themselves up, but unfortunately that just didn't happen. So this gave them evidence that the tracks were a barrier because the tortoises could not get over them, which made them not only deadly if they were active with trains, but deadly if the tortoises then become trapped with no way out to get to water or food on either side. Now, the third and possibly most important part of this study was where the researchers began to test a solution to the tortoise mortality problem. This solution would not only need to be usable by the tortoises, but also be cost effective so that it could reasonably be implemented along the railways. And what the researchers came up with was a series of trenches dug underneath the tracks between those wooden slats. Once they dug a series of trenches in their research area, they set up these wildlife cameras at the entrances on both sides to remotely measure how often and if the tortoises were even beginning to use them. And what they found was in a few days' time, tortoises were beginning to use these trenches. And over the course of their measuring, it was very promising because the tortoises were expanding their ranges effectively and safely moving between both sides of the tracks. And this research is promising because it is a very easy thing to implement, not only with just the gopher tortoises in Florida, but in other regions of the United States. For example, in the deserts of California and Arizona, where there's heavy railway traffic for shipping, but we also have highly endangered desert tortoises. So just by modifying sizes of trenches, perhaps it would be easy to implement not only all over the country, but all over the world where we're having these problems as well. Well, that's all I really have for you guys this week. It was very fascinating reading that article, and I will have it linked down below since it is one of the scientific studies that is open access, so feel free to go read it. This week's article on my website that goes along with this video might be delayed because it is a paper I wrote for class, so it might not be released until the end of the quarter, just so I don't accidentally get flagged for self-plagiarism. However, I do hope to see you guys next time, and I will let you know when the article that goes along with this video is released, as long as you follow my social medias linked down below. All right, see you next time, guys. Thank you again for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell if you would like to see more. And if you'd like to follow me on any of my other social medias, the links are down in the description below. Don't forget to check out thereptilegoth.com for all of my articles and blog posts. If you found any value in this video and you would like to help support the channel, please check out my Patreon page. That link is also in the description down below. And a special thanks goes out to my Diamond Dragon patron, Diane V. What you're doing is really helping me fund a dream here. I will see you guys all in the next one.